Uh, in 1893, another party was founded, the Independent Labour Party, in this country. It was founded at a time when the number of industrial workers was increasing, industrialization was in full progress, the trade unions were very dependent on Liberal MPs, a handful of Liberal MPs to defend their rights. And the ILP was founded because it was felt that the workers needed their own party. And it played its part in helping to create, even from the outside, the Labour Party that came into being. Now, the founding of the Independent Labour Party in 1893 wasn't a smooth process. Frederick Engels, still alive at that time, great socialist theoretician, colleague, comrade of Marx, followed British politics very closely because he lived there. And he wrote this after the party was founded in Bradford in 1893. Of course, there will be stupidities enough, and cliques of every kind too. But so long as it is possible to keep them within decent limits, we should be okay. Now, I ask, did we manage to keep the people, factionalists, within decent limits? And I have to be honest, I don't think we did. When people threaten legal action, when people accuse colleagues of trying to spirit away money and funds, this is not within decent limits. It's a sign of desperation. And I think what we have to do if this party is going to see the light of day, I mean, just think back. A few months ago, we were 18% on some opinion polls, ahead, in two cases, ahead of Labour. The last opinion poll I saw was we were on 1%. So the notion that just setting up a party will automatically get people flocking to us is wrong. You have to show what you're made of. You have to be part of campaigning. You've got to stop these battles which are not within decent limits. And you have to understand we're in a very different period from 1893. We're in a period when the British working class under Thatcher suffered defeat after defeat. The defeat of the miners' strike by Thatcher created a wave of despondency. The trade unions didn't dare do anything. That has changed, with some of the smaller unions very active, the RMT, for instance, teachers, some other white-collar unions are coming back into action again. But we are not living in a revolutionary period. And so we have to understand that the party we're trying to create is, yes, socialist, but socialist in the sense of left social democratic. That's how I would generally, broadly speaking, define the character of your party. And so within that framework, of course, I've always argued since I joined the party at the very beginning, we should have a 10-point program which unites everyone who wants to be united under the broad banner of socialism, left social democracy, and fight together. What is the point of having crazy battles about whether we nationalize everything or whether X is a revisionist for not agreeing with that? These are foolish. To understand we're in a period of defeat. Everywhere in Europe, far-right parties are gathering speed. Le Pen in France is ahead of Macron. The German right-wing party is going forward very quickly. In Italy, they're in power. In all these cases, what has happened is that social democracy, the Socialist Party, and the Communist parties too, for other reasons, have been wiped out. Virtually, the socialist, social democratic, extreme centre parties are still around but losing support. And that is exactly what is happening in Britain. That the Labour Party is losing support. They think by a few cosmetic measures they'll get it back again. So they'd find this thing, which has been their main programmatic opposition to Farage, that when he was a schoolboy, he was a racist. He hasn't replied back to that, but I can give him a reply. He should say to them, yeah, at least I'm consistent, unlike you. He hasn't changed much, so what? We know who he is. Why should we waste too much time on him? In any case, the key point is that Labour, most of its MPs, are incapable of fighting against reform. That has become very clear. So it's not a easygoing, happy situation. It means that your party has a task to fulfill. To unite itself first, and to unite with other like-minded parties, large or small when the time comes, for local election alliances, for alliances during the general election. And both Jeremy and Zara, I'm very pleased, have not adopted a sectarian attitude to Zach Polanski. It's foolish to do that. Why? He's been more effective than we have. Their membership is well over 100,000 now, and for good reason, because while we were fighting each other, calling each other names, threatening court actions and stupidities like that, he was busy winning over his party, his membership, and taking the Greens leftwards. That's effectively what he did. And so I think we have to realize that in this very short time that we've been in existence, we've made mistakes. Many of us have made mistakes. And in particular, the leading factions at the top of the party should understand that it is in everyone's interest to have a CEC elected that represents everyone, including the rank and file, the bulk of which didn't even switch on to live stream what was happening in the party. The bulk of them, our members, 60,000, did not vote in the various voting that took place. And that brings me to another point. Obviously, given the size of the party, it's good to have online communications. But these online communications do not make up for strong local conferences, regional conferences, and strong branches. And it is these strong branches where lots of politics is discussed. Otherwise, politics becomes atomized. That is effectively what happens by talking non-stop on computers. Fine, we have to do it. I appreciate that. But it should not become a substitute for action on the ground, for actually having discussions, for not trying to stop discussions, from telling people that we grow stronger when we are able to discuss and debate, that there are no issues on which we should be scared of debating Labour, or if we have to reform, or people associated with them. And in order to do that, you have to have an educated membership that just doesn't live in the bubble of the left. But that goes beyond that. And what has permitted us to go beyond that, let's be honest, has been the Stop the War campaign, the movement that has been built over years now for the support of the Palestinian people in Gaza, that has brought us together. Lots and lots of socialists with non-socialists. I mean, the Palestine Action people, incredibly courageous, who are on hunger strike now, your party should be supporting them, like we did during the Irish hunger strikes. Without agreeing with everything, we did defend the hunger strikers who were on strike against the British presence in Ireland. And we have to speak up on these things. A political party can't remain silent. They get too comfortable with saying, oh, I scored a few points over you. If we do that, we will never build a proper party, and all these advances that have been made will disappear very quickly, precisely because Labour is collapsing all over the place. We have a situation where there are lots of possibilities. I don't think people are going to rush back to Labour again, even if they dump Starmer, because they haven't got too many people who can replace him and be totally better. People don't believe them now. There's a loss of confidence in this Labour leadership. People think they are liars, which they are. So defending the health service, defending the utilities, renationalizing the railways is all very important and should be included in the demands. And I've added in previous meetings I've done that democratizing Britain, having local governments that are democratic and with power to take action locally as they used to once upon a time, getting rid of the monarchy in the House of Lords. Old demands of left-wing Republicans and socialists in this country. We can't ignore them when you read that the monarchy itself is discussing reforming itself because they know they've gone completely out of control on many levels. And I will just say one thing on Islamophobia. It has grown beyond belief all over Europe and the United States. It's not just in the UK. If I was to be totally frank, I'd say it's marginally better in the UK. It's much, much worse in France, in Germany, in Italy, and the United States. But there is a problem, and I'll tell you what that problem is, that large numbers of young, middle-aged and old Muslims do not know the history of their religion. They take the history as being effectively the Quran, commentaries on the Quran, and what's written on it. Fine. That's their right as Muslims, most people. But there is another history. There is the history of Islamic civilization that functioned from the 7th century to at least the 12th century, where enormous advances were made by Muslim scientists, yes, scientists, in medicine, in astronomy, in mathematics, algebra. Where does it come from? Algebra, an Arabic word, showing how mathematics was advancing. And this type of education is not done effectively either in schools or in Muslim groups. And it's important not just that people should know this, which they should, but it's important of taking on and replying to the Islamophobes in our society, including those in the government and the Labour Party as well, who have no idea of most things, leave alone this. And what happened in Europe, that Islam was a central part of European culture for several hundred years till it was driven out by force. That is what our people should be taught, and everyone should be taught this. It's not sufficient just to say, oh, Islamophobia. Yeah, There is Islamophobia. The question is how to fight it. And this too can be done by both people inside your party and outside your party, Muslim groups allied to other people. I mean, I would be very much in favor of giving a set of lecture to our Muslim members of parliament, asking them, what do you know about your own religion? I'm not a religious person, but I tell you, I certainly have a knowledge of Islamic history, which is better than most religious people I have encountered. So we have to think in these terms if we're going to change politics and culture in this country, and for that your party remains important. And we shouldn't become, we should do everything possible to stop a factionalism which has now reached absurd heights. Just try and end it. It would be a real tragedy if Jeremy got pissed off and left the party, or Zara. We don't. We need them both, and we need others like them to build a unified party. And I joke sometimes about this, but I say to them, you're both, to Zara and Jeremy, you're both very fond of Zach Polanski. Good, so am I. But a little bit of that affection towards each other wouldn't go amiss.
Agreed.
Tiny bit, just a tiny bit. It would be helpful rather than grim faces on platforms or fake smiles. I'm fed up of all that, and so are many, many people who are members of your party. And lastly, I would say, as others have already stressed, one of our strongest points is on foreign policy. What we want, what we have done, what we can do. No support for NATO. No support for its warmongering that is now going on a massive scale in this country and other European countries. Russia has suddenly become the enemy. Russia is prepared to negotiate a settlement. The Americans once for this settlement. The Europeans feel they'll be totally discredited, the European elite, when in their own countries a minority is for these wars. A majority are for immediate negotiated settlement on the Ukraine, like they are in Britain. So why create this warmongering? Why talk about conscription? Why scare the living daylights of people and deny them space to speak dissent on Ukraine? In other words, the same thing is happening in Ukraine itself. Ukraine now today is a microcosm of Europe. Massive corruption by the elite. Forcible recruitment of people being dragged off the streets, etc. So it's not that there isn't support for peace, there is. It's the elites that represent big money and capital and the arms industry who let it proceed forward. So I'd end by saying we still have a chance. Not all is lost. Let us unite as best we can while maintaining arguments. Because a political party without arguments is a dead party. We've seen Labour dying, killing itself. Now they are regretting it because they see how many people they've lost and the challenges there are. But I think we have a chance, and we should really fight hard to make sure that something is preserved. And it will only be preserved by activities on every level. Thanks.